baby rabbit is in pain, or I could put him in a box and try to nurse him back to health so he can later be killed by some other predator, or I could simply end his suffering immediately. And for anyone who wants to know, the fastest way to end the life of a small animal is to just bash their skull in with a shovel or a hammer, whatever you have. Just do it fast and do it hard.
And yes, Efilism does deal with all of this, end game stuff, and some of it is really nasty.
I am in total agreement that non-human animals are better off euthanized. And by every rational measurement of well-being, the only thing preventing a sentient being's life from being tragically appalling is a quick and painless death before that being has sufficient interest in continuing to exist.
My solution to antinatalism would be just kill all the women. Honestly, I think men got it all wrong, Instead of killing each other, they should just kill all the women, kill the females, and there you have your antinatalism solution.
There's a superior physical, rational argument for eliminating 100% of the life on this planet. Is it worth procreating, is the question, not is it worth living. Now we can talk about the it's worth living thing way later on, But
tomorrow yields pain and suffering for everybody. The earlier your demise, the safer it is for you. So at whatever point you do die, you are safer to have died then than to experience the following day.
Life is not presenting us with a lot of great options here. And so, yes, maybe you would have to kill one generation to prevent thousands and bazillions of generations after. Maybe that is the only option that's available.
So I'm not even massively against the killing. My biggest issue is the constant breeding of these new animals. It may be a case where we have to accept that these animals will not be allowed to die out and will have to be killed off. The ethical cost of killing off a species may be worth it if the result is that no new lives are brought into existence. To summarize, where possible, extinction should be brought about by dying out, but where dying out is not possible, species will have to be killed off.
There may be a point in time where human population gets to a point where it's like, yeah, we can actually convince everyone or enough people that it's like, yeah, the majority has voted. Sorry, you don't get to keep fucking raping people. Natalists. It ends now. You can do this by still respecting right to life and liberty, I believe, up to a point. Again, like if doing it non-violently cannot work, how do you stop that rapist from raping?
I don't look at this as unfortunate for the deceased. It's unfortunate for their family members, but certainly not for him or her. He will never receive any more harm. He will never catch a disease. He will never feel pain. He will never feel hunger or rejection or disappointment. And that is the termination of that person's lifelong suffering. He or she will suffer no more.
Every time you see that somebody died, say you see a 10-year-old died in a car crash or a 9-year-old girl fell off the 10th story balcony, you shouldn't really see it as a tragedy because you have no idea what sort of horrors and harms awaited that person. There's a lot of horror and harm in life. There's a lot of experience of suffering, and by dying, you avoid them. I'm a pro-mortalist. As a pro-mortalist, I think if everybody offed themselves, everybody would be better off. There would be no more suffering. There would be no more, that's the optimal way to get rid of suffering. I don't see deaths as tragedies. I look at the side of, this child avoided so much unnecessary harm.
I just want people to question the overall disappointment with death. You are definitely missing out on many, many horrors.
Promortalism, the philosophical definition, states that it's good for those who die, but not necessarily for those who are affected by the death. Is any life worth living after birth? And that can easily be tied back into the net suffering equation. Suffering enacted and reduced by imposition against free will, versus suffering reduced and endured in respect to free will. So this has to do with the consent argument and the net amount of suffering that will exist if we do or do not respect the free will of others.
The glorious final product of a shitty life. Death. Death. Being in the grave. No longer feeling all of these sensitivities. No longer feeling with my mind all of the pain and suffering that is going on in other creatures. Death. Death is not bad. Death is glorious. Death is wonderful. Death is great.
I would be passing out suicide like candy on Halloween if I could. We live in a disgusting world where all we want is out.
As an Efilist, I believe that the only objective problem in the universe is sentient life. To abolish it, it's like we got to go 100% red button. That's the best way to do it. And in, a graceful, peaceful manner, preferably. Either we go red button or not at all.
My advice to anybody, my advice is always to end life. I think every single human being should, if they can, if they have the guts to, if they have the means to, if they don't have anyone in their life that they're worried about hurting, they should end it. There's no good in continuing life. Every single day brings harm. Every single day brings risk. So my advice is to opt out of this hellhole, this madhouse.
In order to have something like a Manhattan Project for a graceful exit, the majority of people will need to at least understand why one is needed. The main priority should be to convince others of 4 main truths that explain why there should be a graceful exit.
Ended up coming to Amanda's The Efilists. And there we are. And basically, yeah, so that's why I'm an anti-natalist. From the arguments put forward to me by the clips and opinions, but very strongly from this movie here.
Promortalism in this talk is going to be referred to as the conviction that if all sentients were to just essentially die in their sleep tonight, that would be a good thing. Or if you had a big red button to remove all sentience from existence, you would be morally obligated to press that button. I want to stress that the adherents of this view do not condone the removal of individual lives, both because it would be violating that person's desire to continue and because of the suffering it would inevitably cause those who are left to grieve. It can only be effective if done universally.
It's either we violate consent once for everybody, or we let things continue on as they're going. Promortalism sounds preferable to that. In Mendham's channel, he is very articulate. And he has quite a way of describing exactly what life is. I'm sure we could figure out how to poison the planet enough to make it so uninhabitable to anything complex. Anyone that says it's impossible for us to eliminate all life on Earth just lacks imagination.
I'm real similarly aligned to Mendham, and it seems like you are too. Was Mendham a huge influence for you in terms of your anti-natalist thinking?
Yeah, 100%.
Negative utilitarianism leads to the point of view of this channel, and in Mendham and Efilism. A negative utilitarian would not necessarily be against lying or appealing to emotion. We need to pull the plug as gracefully and as soon as possible.
Will we try to free them in the end? Will we try to free ourselves? Will it have to be violent? Will we try to find another way? Or will our lack of responsibility be another form of violence altogether? What will happen? What will we do? What should we do? And at the very least, I think those are all questions we need to be asking. All sentience is a prison.